Zhezhi's kit was leaked today, and oh boy, she's something else. Because for some godforsaken reason, Kuro decided to buff the best DPS in the game. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Why don't I go through her kit first? Because this is Zhezhi's kit explained. So, starting with the base kit, her basics are nothing much. You may still use them to stack up her forte, but don't worry about that too much. That's just gonna come naturally. Skill is going to be actually useful though, because it does some damage, and if you have 60 forte gauge, it spawns 2 imprints. Now, what are these imprints? Well, you're gonna need them for her forte circuit. So you kinda do want these things spawned, so make sure you have enough forte gauge before you use your skill. Now, the ultimate is also nothing really complicated. It will cause her to use coordinate attacks when allies deal damage. It will spawn 3 cranes after doing damage with a maximum of 1 per second. So doing damage one time spawns 3 cranes over a 2 to 3 second period. This is important to remember because if you are using something like a long animation that you can't really interrupt but only hits once, then that means that you're not going to get punished for it, because even while you're in that animation, the cranes are going to keep spawning. Only a total of 21 cranes can be spawned, after which the ultimate will end. Now, they count as coordinate attacks, and they also count as basic attack damage. So this is going to help her stack her forte gauge. As for the forte circuit, it is quite a mouthful. I'll begin with the gauge that her skill uses, which is a cap of 90. Its usage is tied to the skill. Speaking of which, there are 5 possible ways to use this remaining 30 forte. You either hold the basic after your 3rd basic attack, press basic attack after using skill, hold basic attack after one of her special skills, which I will get to, hold basic in midair, hold basic after dodge. This is going to consume 30 forte to spawn another imprint from her skill. When the imprints are close to her, skill is replaced with an enhanced skill that will teleport her to the location of the imprint and deal basic attack damage. It also gives her a stack. When she is at 2 stacks, the skill is enhanced again and now does more damage as well as giving basic attack damage bonus to herself. That is a damn mouthful. So glad to see that her intro, outro, and inherent skills are very simple. The intro skill just does some damage and regenerates forte gauge, while the outro skill buffs Glacio damage deepened by 20% and resonance skill damage deepened by 25%. So, yeah, that is essentially like Yinlin but Glacio and skill damage. Inherent skill 1 gives 6% attack after Zhezhi does her enhanced skill up to 3 stacks, so 18% attack, and the second one gives 15% resonance energy after outro to the next character, which is really powerful. Because if you use her in something like a Jinshi team, her energy requirement is essentially gone. So, incredibly powerful inherent skill. It's not an easy kit to understand at face value, but when you do understand it, it is a really good kit. Your rotation is going to look a little something like this. You start with your intro skill, use your ultimate, then use your basic attacks until your forte gauge is full, use your skill, basic attack once, triple skill, and then outro. If you've been enjoying the video so far, be sure to follow me on Twitter and join my Discord, as well as subscribe and like the video and maybe even leave a comment. It helps me out a ton. Well, back to the kit. So, let's talk about the team building. And this is going to be an interesting one, because there's one very clear answer that Kuro Games is trying to push you towards, and that is a Jinshi hypercarry team. Everything except for a singular part of her kit is pointing towards Jinshi being good, which I will get to. First of all, she fulfills the obligatory coordinated attack quota, because Jinshi obviously does a very big nuke that she needs to stack up, and she does this especially well through coordinated attacks, which Zhezhi has enough of. And it's even more so than Yinlin because she can access said coordinate attacks easier. And that's the main thing that Jinshi wants. The problem I have with Yinlin in a Jinshi team is the fact that Yinlin's coordinate attacks only begin at the very end of her rotation, while Zhezhi does them at the very beginning. Which I said in my speculation video is something that I would like to see out of her. But she has more than just the coordinate attacks, because obviously she also buffs resonance skill damage deepen on her outro. Unfortunately, there's also Glacio damage, which is really just useless for a Jinchi team. So, this is why I would tell them to change the outro skill to just be even more skill damage instead of Glacio. She was so obviously designed to be used with Jinchi, so Glacio just makes no sense to me. I understand that Yinlin also buffs Electro, and that Changli also buffs Fusion, but I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. Even with the Glacio damage being useless though, Zhezhi is Jinchi's new best partner. Unfortunately, the screenshots with Tauchi are higher though, which, again, Kuro, please change this. But where else does Zhezhi function? She works with other skilled damage dealers. So the first one I want to talk about is Changli. So while she does work with Changli, she's not best in slot. This is because, unlike Jinchi, Changli's damage is a lot more spread out between other things, like echo damage, ultimate damage, basic damage, etc. So, ultimately, Zhezhi's skill damage deepen is just not as useful for Changli as it is for Jinchi. This combined with the fact that Zhezhi's personal damage is also just a lot lower than Yinlin's, who is also very good in a Changli team, it just doesn't bode well for her. Encore is also a very good team with Changli for dual DPS comp, so I'm sorry Changli, but you can't really use Zhezhi as well. She's also going to function for Chixia, but let's be honest, if you're good with Chixia, that's not really something to write home about. And then Zhezhi, because she buffs Glacio, she's also going to work with Ling Yang. Ling Yang does also want to use his skill, and obviously he does Glacio damage, but he's not exactly what I would call a model unit either. So if you pull for Zhezhi, you better hope you have a Jinchi, because that's going to be the main partner. Her signature weapon is an interesting one. It has 500 base attack and 72% crit damage, which is already off to a good start. It has 12% attack in the passive, and when you use your skill, you gain 12% basic attack damage up to 3 times. Which makes sense because, oh my god, this character is going to spam the hell out of her skill. After you use your outro skill, if you have 3 stacks of this effect, it consumes the stacks for 52% basic attack damage. It is a good rectifier. I see it mainly being good on Encore and obviously Zhezhi herself, but for the rest of the rectifier units, it's just going to be a victim of String Master. Now let's look at the sequences. Her S1 is going to increase the limit of the amount of coordinate attack she can do by 6, which I guess is decent, but I wouldn't say it's anything to write home about. S2 will give Zhezhi 15 energy back after using her ultimate, as well as increasing her crit damage by 10%. This is good for Zhezhi's own damage, but I wouldn't say it's great overall because Zhezhi's damage output is not really that impressive. S3 is going to give her 15% attack after any form of her skill is cast, so 45% attack. I would say it's pretty solid, but again, because it's forced on Zhezhi's damage, I'm not that confident in it. S4 gives the entire team 20% attack after using ultimate. Please put this in the base kit. I need her to buff Jinchi more. Please, I want to see her nukes higher. For every 3 cranes summoned by the ultimate, she is going to spawn another crane, which will deal 140% of the original's damage. Don't go for this on its own, and if you do, you're so close to S6, you might as well. So, at S6, after using Zhezhi's enhanced skills, it will spawn another crane that deals 120% of Zhezhi's enhanced skill as damage. Very good for Zhezhi's own damage, but still, it won't free her from the sub-DPS curse. I'm overall not really that happy with these sequences, but I think that might be because what Genshin does a lot with Constellations is it turns the character into a main DPS. So, a lot of the time when you get an S6 character in WoWa, they're going to be disappointing compared to an S6 main DPS, which means you often shouldn't go for S6 sub-DPS characters. If I had to choose between S6 Yinlin or S6 Jinchi, I'd pick Jinchi anytime. So, what do you guys think of Zhezhi? I am overall happy with her as a Jinchi support, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go for her, because I would have really appreciated if she was more of a buffer and less of doing her own damage. But that'll be all from me. Peace.